Sunday's exhibition against VCU was billed as the unofficial beginning of the Kevin Willard era at Villanova, and our first look at highly regarded freshman Acaden Lewis and the new-look Cats. But the way the first 20 minutes played out, it almost felt like the start of the era of Acaden. We've got actual basketball to break down and reactions from both coaches about the show Lewis put on and how the rest of his teammates looked as well. We'll discuss what there was to like and where the concerns lie. It's all coming up on this edition of Holy Nova. Hi, everybody, and welcome to Holy Nova. We are part of the Big East Energy Network. I'm Matt Janus. No David White on this episode. He'll be back later in the week. But congratulations, everybody. We made it through the offseason, at least sort of, kind of. Exhibition basketball is here, and Villanova has played a game. We were there. We've got reactions from Kevin Willard, Phil Martelli Jr., Acaden Lewis, and others as the Wildcats get a win in their exhibition debut. But first, we want to make sure we ask you to subscribe to all our Big East Energy Network coverage, and please like this video as it helps us get in front of more Villanova fans. We'll be here twice weekly all season long. What a show, though, it was from the Wildcats last night, a 70-51 win over VCU. A lot of questions about what to expect coming in, and some news as we knew that the Wildcats would be shorthanded. 4 players actually end up being sidelined due to injury. So this depth that we talked about all year long, right now not available for the Cats. It didn't seem to matter. In 2 head coaching debuts, it was Villanova's Kevin Willard getting the best of local product Phil Martelli Jr. A 19-point victory for the Wildcats, but the story was Acaden Lewis. And it wasn't just that Acaden Lewis looked good. It was that he looked good right from the jump. He had on the game's first minute a transition defensive stop and then a drive all the way to the bucket, a beautiful pick and roll that he goes downhill, hits a floater, 45 seconds in, he's got a defensive stop and a score, and that kind of helped his confidence, and you could just see it roll from there. He had an impressive first half. The Finneran Pavilion was abuzz at what they saw. We knew Lewis was good off the bounce, and he did not disappoint in that area. What I think really surprised a lot of people was just how polished he looked over those first 20 minutes. He didn't look like a freshman. He certainly didn't look like a guy playing in his first collegiate game. He looked more poised than that, and he just made so many right decisions. He was good on switches. He boxed out, got involved on rebounds. His decision-making in terms of when to push, when to slow it up was really good. He only turned the basketball over one time. Even the one glaring mistake that he made at the end of the first half, where he kind of just started playing with the ball a little bit in the backcourt, and VCU's defense stepped forward. It looked like it might be a 10-second violation. At best, it looked like Villanova wasn't going to get a good look. He throws a magical pass the length of the floor that should have resulted in a layup. Wildcats just weren't ready to catch it, and it didn't end up working out that way. But he made the best of a bad situation, did not panic when things started to go wrong. It was a sterling 20 minutes. Then came the second half. First 10 minutes, he didn't look quite as sterling. In fact, he looked more like what I expected him to look like. There were some freshman mistakes. There was a couple missed box outs. Couple rebounds he didn't go get. Maybe a defensive switch or two where either he wasn't in the right spot or he wasn't communicating and his teammates were in the wrong spot because, obviously hard to tell exactly what they're trying to work on at this stage of the season in terms of defensive assignments as they get Kevin Willard's system down. But something was off. He was involved, and he just kind of floated under the radar. He had 2 points over the first 10 minutes of that second half. Not a big distributor. They sat him down a couple of times. And then as VCU made a little bit of a run, got the game back to single digits, boom, Acaden Lewis returned and took over the game again. Not so much with his scoring. He did knock down a couple of big buckets. He finishes the night 7 of 12. He had 3 rebounds, 3 assists. It was just the way he controlled the game. Always pushing when the opportunity was there, playing downhill, pick and roll game, which we've talked about all off season, how much Kevin Willard loves to implement it. Well, he was there in the middle of it all, going downhill. He got Duke Brennan, a couple of easy looks inside. He got Matthew Hodge, a couple of layups, plus a missed dunk from each that you feel like as the season goes on and that rapport continues to build, they'll get that figured out. My favorite moment might have been a the most beautiful pick and roll execution from Villanova of the night. Set up the defense, got rolling downhill. Lewis turns the corner. You got Brennan going to the basket. Lewis threads the needle with a gorgeous pass. Brennan gets it, goes to dunk, in and out. Lewis goes to Brennan. Lewis, the freshman, says, "My bad. Next time it'll be a lob." It was impressive to watch. He wasn't disappointed at the missed dime. He wasn't kind of sulking at the play not working out. He was on to the next play and he was taking responsibility. Don't always see that from a lot of freshmen. Acaden Lewis is the real deal. We all knew he was going to be good. It just was a question of how long would it take. And let's pump the brakes in terms of it was one game and it was an exhibition. And it was a VCU team that wasn't switching very much defensively in terms of what they were trying to do. They ran a little bit of full court. They were pretty vanilla. Phil Martelli Jr. saying after the game, as we're trying to install our system, we're maybe a little bit behind where Villanova is right now. And we came in with a little bit more of a bland approach than what the Wildcats did. That being said, still good stuff from this Villanova team and from Acaden Lewis. A lot to love. And it was funny, Kevin Willard, after the contest, talking about Acaden Lewis, almost seemed like he was trying to downplay it a little bit to keep expectations from soaring too high.
I thought they all played. I thought Acaden played very well. Again, I think one of the biggest things with young players is getting the casualness out of their game and understanding that every possession is really important. I think that's both these guys are really talented. They both can score the ball in different ways, but getting them to understand in college basketball, like you just can't come down and just be casual. It has to have purpose on every possession. So for their first games, pretty good, but we just got to work on it.
It was kind of funny to hear Kevin Willard. You hear that voice go up. All the questions were about how good Acaden Lewis looked earlier in the press conference, and he was impressed by what Lewis was able to do. But he's a typical coach. He's got to find something to improve upon. But B, don't want to get things out of control. Phil Martelli Jr., the head coach at VCU, great guy, going to be a really good coach. Did a wonderful job at Bryant. Obviously, on his dad's staff early in his career, coached under Monte Ross at Delaware for a long stretch, helped them get to an NCAA tournament. Got into an NCAA tournament as a head coach at Bryant. Now he takes over at VCU. They're going to be a good team. They were not a good team on Sunday, but Phil Jr. said a lot of the credit for that had to go to Acaden Lewis. He wasn't as worried about keeping expectations low for the freshman phenom.
That Lewis kid he's the real deal. He's going to be a problem for a lot of people. Just his ability. I didn't realize his ability as that young of an age to be able to kind of play the game that much with the ball in your hands, to make the right reads, to make the right plays. He can go. So that was a big part of it, right? Like we're trying to make the right reads on our defensive end, and he's making the right offensive reads, right? That I'm like, all right, a freshman, he's probably not going to be ready to do that. He was ready to do that.
That's pretty good praise from Phil Martelli Jr., and that's exactly what we were talking about. Just did not look like a true freshman in his first exhibition game, especially in that first half. Talk about hitting the ground running. That is high praise from Phil Martelli and a great sign for Villanova. For Lewis's account, he seemed pretty humble about things and knew that, that second half did happen, especially the early stages. Still some stuff to work on. And when the media was asking him after the game about the concept of a smooth transition to the college level, Acaden Lewis wasn't necessarily biting.
It hasn't been seamless. That's the best answer I can give you. I've struggled with turnovers and just doing a little too much sometimes. I'm playing with really good players such as BL, who's next to me right here. So just learning, get off the ball, get it back on the second swing or third swing. We have a lot of talented guys in this team. So the best thing I've done is just kind of stayed out the way. And sit well, I was really on ball, always pressing to go get the ball. Here, I'll try my best to just, let other dudes rock out and get mine when they're needed in the flow of the game.
That other guy you see up there on the dais with Kevin Willard and Acaden Lewis was Bryce Lindsay, the transfer from JMU in his first year as a Wildcat, also making his debut. Still a pretty young kid at the college level. He was impressive as well. Lindsay's prone to a couple of mistakes. We knew that it's going to be an adjustment, even though he had a taste of major college basketball. He hit the floor last year in the Sun Belt at JMU. Absolutely impressive, one of the best rookies in that conference, but now jumping up to the Big East level, and not a Big East opponent, but VCU, pretty good basketball program over the years. And Lindsay, I thought was really good. I mean, not only in terms of what he was able to do statistically, and that was out there. He scored, and he scored in bunches in this contest. Lindsay, in fact, ending the night with 12 points, 4 of 10 from the field. But, Kevin Willard talking about playing faster. We certainly saw that from Villanova. There was much more fluidity. They were looking to push. They weren't pushing just to push, but when the opportunity was there in transition, they took it, which I don't know about most Villanova fans. That was a pretty welcome scene for me. If you're going to play slow and you're going to play laborious, you better win at the clip that Jay Wright did, because if you're losing and playing at that tempo, it's not always that much fun to watch. And to see them get out and transition a little bit more, A, is more fun, and B, more importantly, I think it leads to some easy opportunities, particularly as this young team starts to find its way on the offensive end early in the season. I think as they get more and more established, and that cohesion is built, the transition game will still be there. It just won't be as critical. But at this stage of the season, Wildcats absolutely needed. And Lindsay is going to be one of those engines that kind of pushes it. He's so quick. He plays downhill, and his ability to change directions, I think, was impressive. Got off his shot quickly. It was funny. First possession of the game, he turns it over, and then just a minute or two later creates a three off the bounce, knocks it down. He was able to kind of slash his way through in the open floor, get to the bucket a couple of times, and the ball movement, made the extra pass. He did take 5 threes, but he could have forced 2 or 3 more. He made that extra look, which is good to keep it moving, especially in that first half. Villanova's ball movement was great, and it led to a lot of open looks. They didn't make those open looks, which is something that we will talk about, but it was good sign for the Cats to get that type of offensive movement going in the system. And they were asked, Lindsay and Lewis, about the rapport that they have built in the early stages and kind of the relationship that they have going. And it was kind of a funny moment between the two and head coach Kevin Willard.
I would say me and Acaden, we built a strong chemistry together. This summer we played a lot together when we get up and down. Just taking him, on my wing, giving him pointers. He's a great player. He understands the game as a point guard, and not get on him too much, but just let him, be free out there.
Yeah, exactly what he said. He's been a great bigger brother to me. Like you're a little old for sophomore. So he's been great for me. He always gives me pointers, like you say.
You guys are the same age.
Chill out. He's been great for me though. I think everybody on this team has been like a big brother to me, even though I'm a little old. I think everybody's been great. They picked me up. Perkins, Bryce took me to the side before the game. Just told me it was gonna be cool. Like, even if I was nervous, just play through it, and I really appreciate them for that, because that lift up really helped me out.
Having a little bit of fun with each other there. Obviously, Acaden Lewis, a little bit older for a freshman, and they were reminding him that he's not that much younger than Bryce Lindsay. But the importance is he's young in terms of experience, and to be able to do what he did yesterday, quite impressive. Lindsay's first game in a Villanova uniform, that was also very impressive. A lot to like if you are a Wildcat fan in terms of what we saw to get things started in the exhibition season. This Villanova team, when you look at where they are right now as a group, what they are hoping to accomplish, did this change expectations? No, it should not change expectations. That's not the way any of this works. It's one game, it's one exhibition game. And there were some areas of maybe concern. Kevin Willard said we have a ton to work on. We are a little bit of a mess in a lot of different areas. And consequently, when you look at the defensive numbers, VCU shoots 5 of 25 from 3. I asked Phil Martelli Jr. after the game, how much of that was good shots that just didn't go in, and how much of that was what Villanova did defensively? He gave some credit to the Villanova defense. He said they were switching man and zone. We haven't practiced against that a great deal in practice to this point, and consequently, they kind of were a little confused by it and a little off kilter in their offense as a result of it, but they also got a lot of open looks. So it's one of those things was Did the shots not go, or did you play great defense? Probably a little bit of both. Kevin Willard has some things that I think that will be very pleased about from what he saw at the defensive end, but at the same time knows that there's a lot of work still in front of this group. The other side, Villanova missed a lot of shots, 6 of 21 from three-point range, just 29% from three. That was one of the big question marks coming in. It was the one thing that Acaden Lewis did not do tonight that they need him to be able to do over the course of the season. It wasn't a high volume of shots. He was 1 of 4 from three. He knocked one down in the second half. He was 0 of 3 from deep in the first half. They were 2 of the 3 in that first half were great looks. One came with a shot clock winding down where he kind of had to fade away, shot like a 27, 28-footer. That's not a big deal, just not a great offensive possession. You flush that, move on to the next. But remember, Kevin Willard talking about that 35% threshold that they're trying to get Acaden Lewis to, and that will be something to keep an eye on all year long, and the rest of the team. Now, remember, playing without 4 important pieces. No Devin Askew, no Zion Stanford, no Tafara, and no Malcolm Flags. There were some injury updates from Kevin Willard at the end of his presser to kind of put into perspective where the Wildcats are health-wise. The news, kind of a mixed bag, some good and some bad.
Hoping to have Dev maybe back for the homestand here. I think we have Queens after BYU, so hopefully Dev will be back then. Zion, he's still in the boot for another 2 weeks, so I'm not looking. He's looking more like December. Tafara will be back this week, so that's good. And then who else is hurt?
Malcolm.
Oh, Malcolm is he's out for a while. So just have to kind of piece together practice, and once we get Dev back for practice, hopefully after BYU, I think that will help. You know, just they don't get any rest in practice. They take all the reps. I think that's one reason it's helped them a little bit. But I'm more worried a little bit long term, you know, hitting January, February, and all of a sudden they're a little gassed because they haven't had rest in practice. So I think that's my biggest. I'm looking long term. So that's my update.
Kind of looking at the concept of attrition, especially for some of the younger players, because they're having to take so many reps in practice and because they're going to play so many minutes early in the season. It'll be something that the coaching staff will have to manage. They're aware of it. That's a good sign. They're not going to try to overdo it too early, but they've got some tough games, particularly, BYU to get things started. And then a month or so in, we got to play Wisconsin and Michigan, 2 Big Ten teams on the road. And oh, by the way, Pittsburgh looked pretty good in their first exhibition game, taking care of business against Providence. So that is the piece of concern right now for this Villanova team, that depth that we talked about. It's real. They're going to play 11 bodies, maybe even 12 early in the season. They're not right now going to be able to do that. In fact, they can't even practice that way. And they are a little, as a result, I think, behind where Kevin Willard would have hoped they'd be at this stage. He said that last night. He said, this isn't kind of the internal clock of where we thought we'd be. We'd be 2 or 3 strides ahead of that right now. But because of the injuries, not because guys are picking things up, they're just not getting as many different combinations together as they can. And the looks that they're getting in practice are a little bit different because of the fact that if you only have 8, 9 healthy bodies, now your 5-on-5 work gets complicated. You got to throw coaches, managers out there. Everything just is a little bit off right now in terms of how the preparation is going for this Villanova team. And yet, all that being said, you beat a VCU team that a lot of people think have a really good chance of getting to the NCAA tournament by 19 in the exhibition debut. That is the good news for sure for this Villanova team. Another thing that was fun to watch from the Wildcats was how unselfish they played. The ball movement that we mentioned earlier that led to a lot of open looks, it was on full display over the course of that exhibition game, and Kevin Willard certainly took note.
These guys are very unselfish. That's one thing I really like about this group. They're an unselfish group. They kind of understand, like, at any one point it could be he can get 30, Malachi get 30. We have guys that can really score the basketball. So I think they've, Tyler's been great. Just guys that they're playing unselfish, and I think they understand as long as they play together, they're all going to benefit.
So Kevin Willard thinking that they are moving in the right direction, liking the style of basketball they're playing. And, it was certainly a fun night for this Villanova team, what they have been able to accomplish early in the season. Again, it's an exhibition game. It's not one that counts. It's not one that you'll sit there and be completely concerned about the results. It's more how you played and the feeling of the style of basketball coming out. A lot of things that they still have to work on. A lot of, I think, concerns in terms of the injuries and in terms of continuing to develop these young guys. Matthew Hodge struggled shooting the basketball a little bit, but I thought he moved well and looked very confident out there. Didn't see a ton of jitters. That was a good sign. Duke Brennan is also somebody we're going to talk about, the transfer from Grand Canyon, wondering how he would adjust to a higher level of college basketball. Boy, all those little things that we talked about with Matthew Hodge, Duke Brennan's got him as well. And then he's got that physicality, the ability to finish near the rim. His footwork, very impressive as well. I thought that was something that really stood out in terms of the ability to either step to the mid-range and get himself open, squared, ready to shoot, or a couple times they isoed him down low. He had an up and under move. He had a spin seal that he was able to finish on, and then the pick and roll. We mentioned he had the missed dunk, but he also had 2 layups off of it and drew a couple of fouls. So a lot to like about what Duke Brennan brought to the table. The one thing that you had to be a bit concerned by for Villanova in terms of the bigs, you're missing some guys up front. You're a little bit thinner right now. You got to avoid foul trouble. Villanova didn't do that. Now, last year, that was a huge issue. This is a completely new team, new coaching staff. You thought maybe it would be a thing of the past. It wasn't. Its first exhibition game. The officials are practicing too. The live atmosphere, maybe guys taking some chances that they shouldn't take. But Villanova was over the limit. 13 minutes into the first half, 12 minutes into the second half. The good news for the Cads, they were able to avoid picking up any more fouls, final 7 minutes of the first half. So VCU got to the 1-1 and then didn't take advantage of it. That's a good sign. That's adjusting to how the game's being played. Bad news in the second half, it didn't necessarily play out that way. And then there was some individual foul trouble, which is not necessarily what you want to see if you're Villanova. Duke Brennan was saddled with that foul trouble, and that's not a guy that really you can afford to lose if you're the Cats. You need Brennan to be able to stay out there. And then Braden Pierce also got himself into some foul trouble. The thing about Braden Pierce that's really interesting that we will certainly keep an eye on over the course of his rookie year is the ability to move laterally because he's big. I mean, we knew he was big, but when you watch him out there, he plays big and he has kind of an imposing size advantage. He made a block. He altered 1 or 2 more shots, but he also picked up some silly fouls. One was on a hustle play, but then a couple where he just wasn't in position because either he was a step late on a switch or he did not rotate over and get to that outside as quick as possible. He's going to be tough to play if you have stretch guys that can kind of stand in the corner. He's not going to be able to go side to side, go from the paint to get to the corner on a closeout, at least not at this stage. Maybe that's something that the Wildcats coaching staff will get him there on, but he isn't fleet of foot. You knew that somebody his size, it stood out, but there are some strengths. I think he's going to be matchup dependent, but he's got to be able to avoid fouls and stay out there. Villanova as a team has got to be able to do that moving forward. It is certainly one of the items that will be on the list and something to keep an eye on this year for the Cats, particularly as the injuries are still an issue. The good news, we mentioned Devin Askew coming back potentially a bit earlier than anticipated. We thought it was early to mid-December, instead talking about game number 2. That's really good news. Zion Stanford is longer than we earlier anticipated, as Kevin Willard said in that video that we played for you. December at the earliest. That's not what we had in mind. The 2 players that'll kind of fill that void a little bit, certainly Malachi Palmer. He had some flashes. He also had a couple maybe poor decisions that it's an exhibition game. You got to work through. And then I thought the game that might have been most interesting in terms of a Villanova player probably was that of their only returner. Tyler Perkins comes out there and, he was all over the floor, making things happen in terms of generating steals. And that's a great sign. You need his athleticism to be able to create some things. He knocked down 4 of 8 shots. 3 of them were layups because of the 5 steals that he had in the contest, and he grabbed 5 rebounds. These are all the positives that you can take from the performance of Perkins. He also, though, continued to struggle with turnovers. And that was something where his decision making last year, it would be good for 5-6 possessions, and then he would have one or two where he would have back-to-back critical turnovers. It really killed Villanova's momentum, started runs for the other team. That's something he's got to get cleaned up. Again, exhibition, that's kind of what you're expecting at this stage. But because everybody else had a pretty decent synergy, maybe it stood out a little bit more. Lot to like, lot to build upon, and we are just getting started. First exhibition is in the books, and we've got Media Day coming up at Madison Square Garden on Tuesday. We'll be up there from Big East Energy Network, making sure we get you sound, videos. We'll try to get it all posted. Follow us on X at Holy Nova Podcast. Keep an eye out on this space. We're going to have another video later in the week. Certainly, we will talk about Media Day. We'll also dive into these injuries a little bit more, what this means for this team, and what do we now think that expectations are for this group. Did they change coming out of the exhibition game? And we'll kind of get a good litmus test to see where they are at Media Day when we talk to both the Cats reps and all of the other Big East coaches and players that are making their way up to Madison Square Garden. So we appreciate it. Our first opportunity to talk about a game here on Holy Nova. Going to be doing it all season long. Please like the video. Very important to help us get in front of more fans. Subscribe if you aren't already to all of our Big East Energy Network, and we will be here twice a week all season long. Going to be in a fun year. Acaden Lewis, the hype is real, man. This kid, it's one exhibition game, and there will be growing pains. He's a freshman. There are going to be ups and downs, but the ups were on full display, especially in that first half against VCU. Not 1-0, doesn't count in the record book, but a win always beats a loss, and the Cats getting it done against VCU. For David White, I'm Matt Janus. Thanks so much for being with us. We will talk to you soon on Holy Nova.